Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Hopefully you are well and good and must be catching up with the lectures on time. Today we are going to indulge with the components of a computer. Today we are going to start this topic, components of a computer, specifically covering the topic software rather than the hardware. A computer has two types of components: hardware and software. Hardware includes input devices like keyboard, like mouse, like trackball, like scanner, like a barcode reader. Hardware also includes output devices like monitors to display the output, printers to display the output as hard copy on page, like plotters and like speakers. Hardware also includes storage devices which stores data like random access memory RAM, like ROM, like magnetic, optical and flash memories, hard disk, CDs, USBs, etc. Hardware components also include the parts installed inside the system unit box and like a motherboard, a microprocessor or CPU installed or attached on a motherboard, and many other components. Specifically, we will target the topic software. Software has further two main types, but these types can be extended up to 4. So these types are system software. System software includes operating system, device drivers, utility programs, and language processors. Then software also includes the second type of a software is application software. It also has further extended types. Then the third type of a software is an internet application. It also has further extended types. Then the fourth type of a software is licensed softwares. It also has further subtypes. So first of all, you need to know is that what is a hardware. As you can see this diagram depicted in front of your eyes, that a monitor, a speaker, a power supply unit, a hard drive, a CD-ROM, a RAM chip, a VGA card, video graphics card, a sound card, a mouse, a keyboard, a speaker. These all are included in hardware. These all are called as hardware components. Why they are called as hardware components? Because they are physical parts. They can be touched as they are tangible. So all physical or tangible parts of a system are called as hardware. Computer hardware is what you can physically touch and see. In simple words, all tangible parts of a computer system are referred as hardware. The components that make up hardware can be categorized as being either internal or external hardware components. Internal hardware components are those components which are installed inside the computer, like an internal hard disk, a motherboard, a RAM, a CPU, a power supply, etc. These all components are basically installed inside the system unit of a computer. So external components are connected to the outside of the computer and can also be referred to as peripherals. These external components are those components which are connected with your computers, through the cables, like a keyboard, a mouse, can be a scanner, can be a printer. So these all devices can be connected to your computer with the help of a cable. These hardware components are not attached inside your computer. They are not present inside the system unit box of your computer. In this diagram in front of your eyes, you can extensively can have an overview of the hardware components like input components or output components or storage device components or system unit components, etc. like a monitor, like a CPU, a keyboard, a printer, a mobile phone, a mouse, a game console, a headset, a scanner, a microphone, a gamepad, a laptop, loudspeaker. So these all are actually your hardware components which you can touch, you can feel, and they are tangible and they are physical. They have a physical, solid presence. So, today's lecture's aim and objective is to study about the first type of a software. Among multiple types of a software, we would initiate the discussion from the first type of a software, that is system software. As you can see that system software is the first and main type of a software, but system software is also further divided into other types too. The four types of a system software are operating system, device drivers, utility programs, and language processors. These are the types which we would inshallah cover in today's lecture. To begin with the foremost concept you need to know is that what actually is a software. Software is not like a hardware. Hardware is the physical or tangible component which can be felt or touched by a user. But unlike hardware, software is not tangible. Software is not a physical part of the computer. You can say that computer is just like a human brain. It's of no use and it can't work if you don't give proper instructions to your brain. These instructions can be called as like an instruction of the software. The computer program helps the computer to perform a specific task. A program can also be called as a software. So a program or a software is said to be running or executing when the computer is using that program. So a software or a program is a set of instructions. The set of instructions given to the computer to perform a specific task. Or we can say that software is the combination of a set of instructions which are given to the computer to perform any activity. So, software tells the computer what to do and how to do. Therefore, a computer performs different operations according to the given instructions. A computer cannot do anything on its own. It must be instructed to do a desired job. It performs a task or solves a problem according to the given instructions in the software. Hence, it is necessary to specify a sequence of instructions when a computer must perform to solve a problem. Let's take an example of MS Word software, the very common and basic software. So, we choose different instructions or options by clicking on the icons or options present on the interface of an MS Word software. Suppose I'm giving you an example, like you open the window of an MS Word software. So you write down your data on that electronic page, and then you want to change the font size of your data, or you want to change the font color or font style of your data, or you want to change the background color of your data. So you are choosing a series of instructions one by one in order to apply those instructions on your data. You are choosing font size. You want to change the font size of your data. Then you are choosing any specific font style in order to change the style, writing style of your data. Then you are choosing any specific background color. So you are choosing these options or instructions from the MS Word software. These options or instructions are already built inside that software. These instructions are already, or options are already part of that software. That is the reason, these options or instructions are the reason you are using that software. You are using that MS Word software to create a specific document. And in order to successfully create a document, an electronic document, you are using these instructions or options. And MS Word software has dozens of different options. So when you are clicking an instruction, when you are clicking an option, You are actually commanding or ordering your computer to perform a specific task. When you are choosing this instruction, font size, actually you are commanding your computer to perform the task of changing a font size or changing a font style. But interesting thing is that softwares are developed through particular computer programming languages like C or C++ or Java or Visual Basic, and dozens of other programming languages are used to develop a software, a program, or an app. So a programming language is actually is a set of commands or instructions and other syntax things used to create a software program. Inshallah, in our second year course, we would extensively study about the basics of software engineering. We would study that how to create certain softwares and programs or apps using certain programming languages. We would specifically study this programming language C++. For now, you need to know is that computer software or a computer program is designed for different purpose, like for controlling the operations of a computer system. Some software may be designed for creating different documents, like in MS Word software, like for calculations in MS Excel software, for drawing purposes, MS Paint software for accessing internet services, for browsing or for surfing the internet, web browsers, which are also the softwares, web browser softwares are developed, and likewise many other softwares have been developed and they are available in the market to fulfill different purposes of a user. So a computer system basically revolves around three things: hardware, software, and the user. A user who's basically using that software, who's basically using that hardware. Bare use of hardware is not easy. So to make it easy, softwares have been created. Softwares are giving instructions to the hardware that what to do and when to do. Without software, most computers would be useless. For example, without your internet browser software, you could not browse or surf the internet. Like if you don't have a Mozilla Firefox or Google Chrome browser installed inside your computer, you cannot surf or browse or search anything on the internet. In order to access the internet, you need to have an operating system, a software like Mozilla Firefox or a Google Chrome software installed inside your computer or even installed inside your smartphone. Without an operating system software, the browser could not run on your computer. Before moving towards the topic hardware, we will cover this topic software. The foremost thing you need to know is that a software can be further divided into mainly two categories: application software and system software. But some other types are also added in the recent times along with these basic types. So the first type is system software. The second type of a software is an application software. The third type of a software is general purpose softwares. And the fourth type of a software is internet applications. And the fifth type, usually which is not added, but here we are adding this fifth type, which is a firmware software. So first of all, the first type of a software, the basic type of a software, is system software. System software is not a single software, is not a single program. Rather, it is a collection of programs. It is a collection of other sub-programs, other sub-softwares, which can work with end users, which can work with application softwares, and which can work with computer hardware to handle the majority of technical details of a computer. System software is a collection of system programs, system softwares that control and coordinate the activities of a computer system. The system software is a collection of programs designed to operate, control and extend the processing capabilities of the computer itself. Here it means that system software has some other sub-softwares, and system software actually controls all the major activities of a computer. It controls all the input-output devices, peripheral devices. It controls all the communication happening between or among these hardware or software components, between all these hardware devices. It also sends the data from one device to another. System software also controls your CPU, controls your microprocessor. It controls all the activities or execution or processing performed by the CPU. Actually, the processing and execution is always performed by a CPU, but the system software is basically helping the CPU to perform the execution or processing tasks. Here I'm including all the types of a system software. Here I'm including all the points of those 4 subtypes of a system software. System software also, other than controlling the CPU's activities, it recognizes the external hardware connected with the computer. It allows those external devices to get connected with the computer or perform certain tasks with the computer, or to perform some communication or transfer of data with the computer. System software also translates or converts the data written in any language like English or Urdu or in maths. It converts any type of data into binary language, into binary code, into the form of zeros and ones. As you already know that the computer can understand only zeros and ones. System software consists of a collection of operative programs required to control computer hardware and also to execute application software. So the purpose of system software is to make the use of computer more effective and efficient. A computer without some kind of system software would be ineffective and impossible to operate. If a computer doesn't have any system software installed inside it, sorry, your computer cannot operate at all. It would be like an empty box. So system software is generally prepared by the computer manufacturers. When some manufacturing company builds the components of a computer or assembles the parts of a computer, at that time the manufacturing company actually installs this system software package inside a computer. So a user when buys a device, a laptop or a desktop PC from the market, that computer or device comes with pre-installed system software package inside it. This is pre-installed inside a computer at the time of device manufacturing. So these softwares or these software products interact with the hardware at a very basic level. These system software programs are actually controlling the hardware. The system software is interacting or communicating with the hardware. System software serves as the interface, or it acts as a bridge between the hardware and the end user. Means between the end user and the hardware, it acts as a communication bridge. So the system software provides a platform to run a computer's hardware and computer application softwares to utilize computer resources and solve their computation problems. Very important point to note here is that system software actually acts as a foundation or a platform, not just for the hardware components, but system software also acts as a platform for the application softwares. Means application softwares run on the platform of system software. That's why we say that system software is the most basic software of a computer, or it is the basic level software of a computer. Since system software runs at the most basic level of a computer, that's why it is called as low level software too. It refers to the operating system Operating system is actually a type of system software, and all utility programs that manage computer resources on a low level. System software also controls resources such as peripheral devices, input, output devices, cable-based devices. System software also controls the CPU execution or processing, and the system software also controls all the storage devices like CDs or DVDs or USBs or hard disks or RAM, etc. So system software is basically a background software that helps the computer to manage its own internal resources. It manages, maintains and controls and coordinates all the activities performed by the components, other components, hardware and software components of a computer. The best known example of system software, or the major example of a system software, is operating system. Here you can see in this diagram we are talking about the system software interface, and this black environment is actually the DOS operating system interface. The other black environment on which you can see some comments, etc., or labeling, etc., of headings, this interface is of Windows operating system. This shows the interface of different versions of Windows operating system, and the last interface is of Linux or Unix operating systems. As you know that operating systems are the major parts of a system software. These are the windows or interfaces of different operating systems installed inside a computer. The user interacts primarily with application software. Why we are saying that? Because a user always uses some kind of software or program on a computer. Some user uses a browser for internet surfing. Some user uses MS Word or MS Excel software for performing certain tasks. So the user basically uses some application software for performing some task. So the system software enables that application software to interact with the computer hardware. User is using the application software, and the application software is being controlled by the system software. So generally the user does not interact with the system software directly. User is interacting directly with the software which that user is using, and that specific software is being controlled by the system software. So the user is indirectly connected with the system software. The user interacts with, basically a user interacts with the window or graphical user interface of a software, of an application software. Suppose if a user is using MS Word software, when that user clicks on the MS Word software, a window opens up. We say that window which has certain options or instructions or icons displayed on it, that window would be called as the graphical user interface of that software. Graphical user interface means a window or an interface on which the options or instructions are displayed. The icons are icons of that software are displayed, and the user of that software, the user who's using that software, can click on those instructions and options and icons in order to perform certain tasks. So every software has its own specific graphical user interface. The graphical user interface, or the option-based interface, or the option-based window of MS Excel is different from the option-based interface of MS Word. The option-based interface or the graphical user interface of MS Paint is different from the option-based or instruction-based graphical user interface of a browser. So every computer that receives some sort of human input would need a user interface. Means a user who's opening up a software in order to perform certain tasks is actually using the interface, is actually using the instruction or option-based interface of an application software. The user is interacting or communicating or is directly in contact with the interface of that software, which allows a person to interact with the computer. Through that software's interface, the user is interacting with the system software or is interacting with the computer. While devices like keyboards, mouse, and touch screens make up the hardware, the user interface makes up the software part of the computer. The two most common forms of a user interface are command line interface. As you can see on that on your screen, that black environment on the left hand side on which certain commands are written, like ipconfig/all or date or Windows IP configuration, etc. This black environment is actually showing the command line interface. Why it is called as command line interface? Because this interface acts like an interface which takes certain commands from the user. Like this interface is like a DOS operating system interface which was used back in 1980s. This black environment actually supports your commands. In common operating systems, commonly in your computers, if you want to see date, you just need to click on the option of date and the date would be displayed to you. But in this black environment, in this command line interface, you don't have this option of seeing the information displayed directly. You need to give a command, then that command line interface would just display the information. So in order to use a command line interface, you would need to remember dozens or even hundreds of commands to perform certain tasks. Another type of a user interface is a graphical user interface. We already have talked about this type of interface. This is an interface, or this is a type of window on which certain options or instructions or icons are displayed, on which a user just clicks and the information would be displayed, where a visual environment such as buttons, icons, and windows would be displayed. Some other important points relevant to the system software are that hardware and software are mutually dependent on each other. Both of them must work together in synchronization to make a computer produce a useful output. If a computer doesn't have hardware but it has some sort of software, then in that case the computer cannot work. And if a computer has hardware but it doesn't have any kind of software, then in that case computer cannot also work. So both components are necessary part of a computer in order to get that computer operated successfully. So software cannot be utilized without supporting hardware. Hardware without a set of programs to operate upon cannot be utilized and is useless. To get a particular job done on the computer, relevant software should be loaded into the hardware. Hardware is a one-time expense. Software development is rather very expensive and is a continuing expense. Here it specifically means that you install a software, but the story doesn't end there. You successfully get over the passage of time certain updates, or you need to update that software, or you need to install the packages, affiliated packages or updates with the passage of time in order to upgrade your software. So the life cycle of a process is continuous. Hardware, different software applications can be loaded on a hardware to run different jobs. Means if there's a hardware component like RAM, in RAM you can temporarily store multiple processes of a software, or you can store multiple softwares or programs inside that RAM temporarily. A software acts as an interface between the user and the hardware. As talked about that point earlier, that software acts as a bridge between the user, between the computer user, and between the computer hardware. If the hardware is the heart of a computer system, then the software is its soul. Both are complementary and necessary part of each other. Both needs to work in conjunction and synchronization with one another. For example, system software controls where a spreadsheet program is stored inside RAM memory. or some main memory or some secondary memory. Here spreadsheet program means they are talking about the MS Excel. So system software controls that how commands are converted so that the system unit or the CPU can process those commands or instructions and convert them into binary form. System software also controls that where a completed document or file would be stored, like it would be stored in some hard disk or it would be stored in some USB. So the system software is divided into further 4 types of software. So these 4 types of a system software are operating system, system utilities or utility programs, third device driver, and fourth sub-software or fourth type of a system software is the language translator or the language processor. Operating system actually harnesses the communication between hardware, between the softwares or programs and other application softwares, while the device driver enables device communication with the operating system and other programs. The device driver actually enables the external hardware devices connected with a computer. It enables them to start communication with the computer. It enables them to come in contact with the computer. It enables them to get recognized by the computer. It creates the familiarity between those external hardware components and between the computer. And the utility programs actually ensure optimum functionality of devices and applications by troubleshooting or solving their problems. The major differences between a hardware and software component are: hardware is a set of physical parts of computer which actually involves in the execution of the instruction. Here specifically we are talking about the hardware component called as CPU, central processing unit, or microprocessor, which is a hardware component, which is a chip which actually executes or processes the data. Then the opposite point of that hardware point would be that software is a program, or software is actually a set of instruction. It is a combination of set of instructions which are to be executed by that CPU part to do the intended task. So a hardware is manufactured in the factories, while software is developed, engineered by the software developers in software houses, even sometimes in houses. A software engineer can develop a software by sitting at his home. So a hardware cannot do any task without a software program giving instructions to it. Here I would again give you that example that you are using an MS Word software and you apply an instruction of font size on your data. So when you apply this instruction font size, you are actually instructing your computer hardware to perform or to change the font size of your data. So a software cannot execute if underlying hardware is not present. So the supporting hardware, the hardware supporting that software should be present inside that system computer. A hardware cannot be touched being a physical can be touched being a physical electronic device. That is obvious that hardware is tangible device which can be touched by the user, while softwares are not tangible. Softwares being digital can be seen. A user can see the interface or options or instructions of a software, but the user cannot physically touch the software. Like a software is just present in the soft form, it is intangible. Hardware categories involve input devices, output devices, and storage devices, while the software categories involve programming softwares and application softwares and certain apps. Any type of app, either you are using on your smartphone, either you are using that app on your computer system. Every kind of app in this world is actually a type of a software, is a type of an application software. So we are continuing the differences between a hardware and software. Hardware is a physical device that is capable of operating tasks and executions based on the software. While software is a set of instructions that is given to the computer to perform operations, hardware is made up of electronic components. Hardware is made up of certain chips and semiconductor parts, etc., and transistors, while software is developed by writing instructions for that software using a certain programming language. As I've told you earlier, that a programming language is basically used to develop a software. So hardware wears out over time, gets old with the passage of time. Means hardware can get older with the passage of time, as over the passage of time it can get corrosion due to the moisture in the air and due to dust and etc. While the software does not wear out over time, however, viruses and bugs can affect the software. While the software cannot be affected by the external stimuli like dust or soil, it cannot get affected by these kind of stimuli. It can just get affected by the bugs or viruses. Hardware is physical or tangible in nature, means a user can touch the hardware components, while software is logical or intangible in nature. Hardware starts functioning once the software is loaded, and the software, to deliver its set of instructions, software is installed on hardware. Hardware has permanent shape and structure which cannot be modified, and software can be modified and reused, means certain updates and can actually extend the features of a software. It can be upgraded with the passage of time. It has no permanent shape and structure. External agents such as dust, mouse, insects, humidity, heat, etc. These are the external stimuli which can actually affect the hardware. While the external agents or external stimuli such as dust, mouse, insects, humidity, heat, etc. cannot affect the hardware. As told you earlier, that the viruses or bugs can only affect the software. Hardware works with binary codes, for example, zeros and ones. As I've already told you that a computer hardware, like suppose specifically I'm talking about the storage device. So the hardware component, a storage device, can only store the data coming from the user in the form of zeros and ones. The machinery of the computer actually converts the data of the user in binary language, in zeros and ones. Software works with the help of high-level languages. These are the languages, these are the programming languages in which softwares can be developed, but these software languages are not understandable by the computers. So when softwares are developed in these high-level languages and we install a software inside our computer, then the instructions or options of a software are actually converted by certain translators, interpreters into the computer's understandable language, into computer's binary language. So the hardware can be duplicated, cannot be duplicated, or the photocopy of a hardware cannot be created, while the software can have duplicate copies or pirated copies. So a user can create copies of a software as many as he wishes. Keyboard, mouse, joysticks, scanner, printer, CDs, DVDs, hard disks, USBs, motherboard, RAM, CPU, chip, your microprocessor, sound cards and graphic cards are the hardware, while the MS Word, MS Excel, any type of apps, any type of app around the world can be considered as your software. Now moving towards the first type of a system software, where we have talked about the features or introductory points of a system software. Now we are moving towards the first type of a system software, that is operating software, operating system software. The operating system is a type of system software that sits between computer hardware and end user. When we were talking about the system software, we were including all the points from its subtypes. We were including the points from operating system, we were including the points from its type, device drivers, utility programs. But now, as we are talking separately about each and every type of a system software, so we will just specifically target their concepts. So the operating system inside the system software is the software which actually acts as a bridge between the computer hardware and the end user. Operating system manages the hardware and software resources of a computer system. It manages the CPU resource, storage devices, and all the input-output devices. CPU, storage devices, input-output devices, these are all, these can also be called as the resources of a computer. Then another example, that suppose a user wants to write or print a report by using an attached printer. So MS Word software can be used for that purpose. MS Word software would be required by the user to accomplish the task of creating an electronic document. Data would be input by the user using an input device or a keyboard, and that data can be displayed using another hardware device, or which would be the output device such as monitor. So the prepared data is then sent to the printer, because the ultimate purpose of a user is to just not create an electronic document, but that user also wants to create a hard copy through the printer. So in order for the MS Word software, a keyboard and a printer to accomplish their respective task, in order to perform their respective task, these devices or hardware components must work with the operating system, because the operating system controls input and output functions. It controls the input and output devices, it controls the memory, it controls all the microprocessor work of a CPU. So these all devices would be controlled by the operating system. These all devices would be able to send data to one another. A keyboard would be able to send the data to the RAM, or from the RAM data would go to a CPU for execution, and from CPU the data would go to the monitor for displaying, and from the memory data would go to the printer for getting a hard copy. So these all hardware components need actually an operating system to control their activities. As we have already said, that operating system actually controls all the activities occurring between hardware and software components. Today the user interacts with the operating system through the graphical user interface. As told you earlier, that when user uses a program or a software like MS Word on a computer, the user is directly using the program or software. The user is directly in contact with that software, and that software is as a result being controlled by the system software, is being controlled by specifically by the operating. So the desktop in modern operating systems is a graphical workplace. Your desktop or the desktop of any computer actually is also can act as a graphical user interface on which you can click certain files or folders, or on which you can place your programs or softwares, and you can click on those softwares and you can enter inside those softwares. So the desktop in modern operating systems is a graphical workplace which contains menus, icons, shortcuts, and apps that are manipulated by the user through a mouse-driven cursor. Or you can control the options or icons or menus or shortcuts placed on a desktop with the help of your finger if you have a touch screen. So the operating system performs all these activities. Common types of operating systems, or common examples of operating systems used nowadays, are all the versions of Windows operating system. You must be using Windows or any version of Windows. Some of you must be using Windows 7 operating system. Some of you must be using Windows 10 operating system. Most of the people are using Windows 7 nowadays, and some of you must be aware of Windows XP. Now it's obsolete, but Windows XP was once a very popular operating system by the logo of this Windows series. And Macintosh operating systems are mostly used on Apple computers, Linux and Unix, Linux and Unix. Linux and Unix operating systems are actually a type of operating systems. They are used on server computers, not on common computers. And Android is also an operating system, but Android operating system is used or on the interface of a smartphone, or Androids are actually installed on your smartphones. So let's talk about the functions of an operating system. Let's have an extensive view of the operating system. Operating system provides the interface between the user and hardware through graphical user interface. Means the user uses some software or program, user uses the interface options or instructions based interface or window of software, of an application software, and that application software or program actually is being controlled by the operating system. And that operating system just not only controls that software, it creates a communication between that application software and the hardware. So the operating system controls the application software as well as it controls the hardware components too. So the operating system creates an interface between the user and the hardware, and it also creates the interface between the application software and between the hardware. Operating system allocates system resources such as CPU to certain users, input-output devices to certain users, storage devices to store the data. So operating system loads and executes application software. That is very simple. When some user uses a software or program, that software or program is absolutely being controlled by the operating system. So operating system manages and allocates memory space for application softwares. Means if you are downloading some application software, any software from the internet, so operating system software makes sure that that software you are downloading must be successfully installed inside your computer on some memory space inside your hard disk. Operating system also processes the management of applications, input, output devices and instructions. Means operating system controls these all hardware components like input devices, output devices. It controls the software components like application softwares. It also controls the instructions or options installed inside a software. When CPU executes those instructions or options, CPU basically performs that execution with the help of operating system. So the operating system is also giving help to the CPU. Operating system is also controlling your CPU. Operating system also configures and manages internal and external peripheral devices. Means operating system manages the internal hardware of a computer stored inside a computer or stored inside a system unit like a motherboard, like a RAM, graphics card, sound card, extension cards, internal parts like internal hard disk, etc. And other than internal hard disk, it also manages the external hardware of a computer. External hardware means a USB, a scanner, a printer, a not a motherboard, a keyboard, a mouse, a joystick, etc. So your operating system manages single or multi-user storage in local or network computers. Means it controls the networks. If your computer is connected inside a network, it is connected with some internet. So your operating system is also managing the space, that storage space, if your computer is actually using some network. So if you are downloading some data from the internet, it is actually managing the space for that data. Operating system also maintains security of your device. Means if you want to place the password on your computer, in order to get it more secure. So you can do that with the help of your operating system settings. It provides you with certain settings. It not just provides you with the devices security options. Your operating system also provides you with network security options if you want to place a password on your internet connection, so nobody can enter your network, nobody can use your internet. It also performs the security management of your files and folders, and it also secures your downloaded application softwares, and it manages your input and output data, and that is similar point. And operating system detects and installs and troubleshoots devices. If you are plugging some or connecting some device with your computer, let's suppose you want to transfer your pictures from your digital camera to your computer, you can temporarily connect your digital camera with your computer. So it would be the task of your operating system to manage the communication between that digital camera, between that external hard disk, and between your computer. So if some problem occurs, it helps you with the troubleshooting of that data of that device. Operating system also monitors system performance through the task manager. Task manager actually manages the tasks actually being performed by the user. The operating system also produces error messages for the user if some problem occurs in your computer. Let's suppose if your hard disk has been filled, it's fully occupied, your hard disk is left with no more space. So the operating system would generate a message. It would display an error message on your screen that kindly free up some space in your hard disk because your hard disk is fully occupied. So the operating system implements, also controls the interface of different softwares and interface of a desktop of your computer. It also manages resources like printers and scanners inside a network connected with your computer, and it also performs file management, that how to store your file or folder and where to store your file and folder inside your computer. It also actually manages the command prompt, means the DOS based command line interface on which you can give the commands. That command prompt interface, that command line interface is actually part of your operating system, as well as it manages the graphics of your computer and the sound and voice of your computer with the help of sound and graphics card. As you can see in this diagram, as I was saying that again and again, that operating system acts as an interface between the user and between the hardware. Then I said that operating system also acts as a bridge between the user and hardware. Operating system acts as a bridge between the application software and hardware. So you can see these concepts being presented in this diagram, that operating system lies between the hardware and the application software. You can see that hardware lies at the most basic or underneath level inside a computer. Hardware is at the most bottom, and the operating system lies just above the hardware, and the operating system is actually acting as a bridge between the hardware and application software. It is connecting the hardware and application software. Likewise, operating system is connecting the hardware with the user too, and you can easily see that user is lying at the topmost level, at the topmost hierarchical level of a computer. User is using the application software, suppose MS Word software, suppose MS Excel software, suppose MS Paint software, or any app, or let's suppose a web browser. So a user is using the application software The application software is getting controlled by the operating system, and the operating system is transferring the data of application software to the hardware. Means if you want to store the data of your application software, if you want to store the data you have written on MS Word page, you want to store that data, so the operating system would store that, would collect the data from that application software and would store that data on some hardware like some hard disk or some USB, etc. In another diagram too, you can see that in hardware, your CPUs are, your microprocessors are involved in your hardware. Your memory devices like your RAM, your hard disk is involved in your hardware. Your input-output devices like your keyboard, your mouse, and your monitor, etc., they are involved in your hardware. So the operating system is basically communicating with the CPU. Operating system is basically communicating with the input-output devices like keyboard, mouse, monitor. It is also communicating with RAM, with your hard disk. So the operating system is communicating with all these types of hardware components and is communicating or acting as a bridge between these hardware components, or is connecting these hardware components with the application software, with the user indirectly. After operating system, second type of a system software is device driver. The first and most important type of a system software was operating system. After operating system, the second type of a system software is device driver. Device driver is something that drives a device. In most cases, a device means a hardware component installed on your computer. Let's suppose a hard disk, a monitor, a keyboard, some graphics card, sound card or Wi-Fi card, modem card. Then what does it mean by drive here? Drive means operate or make it work. Hardware is a combination of a bunch of electronic circuits and some mechanical components. Usually those hardware would not work as expected just by electric power. It requires special software that makes those electronic circuits and mechanical components work as intended. This special software or a set of software is called as a device driver. Even though a device driver is not visible to the ordinary user, they are working in the background almost always when you are using some hardware component of a computer. So, device drivers are specialized programs. Device drivers are specialized softwares that allow particular input or output device to communicate with the rest of the computer system. Device driver is a type of system software that controls the operations of external hardware devices connected with a computer. When we attach any type of external hardware device with a computer, we have to first install the driver for that device inside a computer. For example, when you buy a new printer, when you buy a new scanner, you need to install that printer's you need to install a device driver for that printer. You need to install a device driver for that scanner in order to fulfill the purpose. If you are not installing, you are connecting your printer, you are connecting your scanner with your computer, but you are not installing the device driver for that printer, you are not installing the device driver for that scanner, then that printer or scanner would be physically connected with the computer, but the computer would not be able to recognize that printer device. The computer would not be able to recognize that scanner, and so it would not communicate or transfer any data to printer, or it would not take any data from the scanner. So in order to create a communication between your computer and between external devices, you need to install a device driver for that specific hardware component. In computing, a device driver is a computer program that operates or controls an external hardware component that is attached to your computer. A driver provides a software interface to that external hardware component, enabling the operating system and other computer programs to access that external hardware device, or in order to access that external hardware component. So the device drivers are hardware dependent, and they are operating system specific. Device driver software is a type of system software which brings computer devices and peripherals to life. Peripherals means cable-based hardware components. So without device drivers, the operating system would not assign any duties to the external connected devices. Again, that example, that if you are connecting a printer is an external hardware component. If you are connecting a printer with your computer and you have not installed any device driver for that printer inside your computer, so that without the device driver of that printer, the operating system of the computer would not communicate with that external hardware component printer. So as you can see in this diagram, that at hardware level, you cannot see the hardware, but actually the hardware exists at the bottom level. You can consider that at the topmost level the user exists. After user, the application software exists. After application software, the operating system exists. And after operating system, the device driver exists. And after the device driver, at the bottom level, the hardware exists. So you can see that the user is basically working on the application software. User is basically using some program or software or application software. The user is interacting with that application software, and that application software is basically being controlled by the operating system. So the ordinary user is basically interacting directly with the application software, and that ordinary user is interacting indirectly with the operating system. But the user is interacting with application as well as operating system. These two levels are actually visible to the user. They are directly or indirectly in access of the user. While the user is not able to see the device driver, or is not able to access the device driver level, or is not able to access the hardware level, the operating system is actually creating an interface, is actually acting as a bridge between the application software and between the device driver software. Operating system is acting as a bridge between the application software and between the hardware. So the device driver and the hardware level is not visible to the ordinary user. So another very important concept relevant to the device drivers is the concept of plug and play devices. Sometimes plug and play devices are also called or abbreviated as PNP. It is a phrase used to describe the devices that work with a computer system as soon as these external hardware components are connected with the computer. They successfully start working. They successfully get recognized by the operating system of a computer. The user does not have to manually install the device driver for these type of devices, or even tell the computer that a new device has been added. Instead, the computer automatically recognizes these type of external hardware components and loads new device drivers for those external hardware components automatically, and begins to work with those newly connected hardware components. If you connect a plug and play mouse with your computer, it will just begin to work within a few seconds of being plugged in, while a non-plug and play external component would require you to go through several steps of installing the device drivers and setting up that hardware component before it would work. So the device drivers are provided by device manufacturers. As told you earlier, that at the time of manufacturing of a device, a system software is installed by the manufacturing company, and all the parts of a system software are actually pre-installed. They are installed inside the computer when the computer is getting assembled or getting manufactured inside a factory. So device drivers are provided by device manufacturers. Some devices like mouse, keyboard, monitor, USB, flash drive, etc. are plug-and-play devices. Their software is pre-installed with Windows. When attached, the computer system automatically recognizes them. While plug-and-play usually refers to computer peripheral devices such as keyboards and mouse, etc., it can also be used to describe the internal hardware. So, examples of those external hardware components which require the device drivers are mouse, keyboard, sound card, your graphics card, your network internet or modem card, your printer, your scanner, your digital camera, your USB, your fax machine, your photocopier machine if you are connecting it with your computer. So by default, input devices such as mouse and keyboard have their drivers pre-installed inside a computer. So in short, we can say that plug-and-play devices are those external hardware components which can be plugged in through a USB port, which can be plugged with the computer at any time, but those plug-and-play devices would need a device driver software if those external devices want to get recognized by the computer. If you are connecting a USB, which is a plug-and-play device, you can plug it in a port and you can just plug out after you are done with it. So a USB, which is a plug-and-play device, you can plug it with a computer, but if the device driver of that USB is not installed in your computer, then your computer's operating system would not be able to recognize that it is a USB device. Your operating system would not transfer any data to the USB. Your operating system would not take any data from the USB. Your operating system or your computer would not communicate with that USB device. So in order to let your operating system communicate with your USB, you need to install a device driver for that USB. So the USB, mouse and keyboard are those external hardware devices which have their device drivers mostly pre-installed inside a computer. But if that's not the case, then you have to install a device driver for those devices. In order to give you more concrete understanding of device drivers, let me give you an example. You would already know that when you run a web browser, for example, majority of the people are using Google Chrome web browser nowadays. So suppose when you run a browser such as Google Chrome and you visit a website by giving some keyword into the Google Chrome web browser, the web page that you requested reaches your web browser. As you can see here in this diagram, that you opened Google Chrome web browser on your computer, you requested for a web page, for a website, and what happened, that web page that you requested actually reached your browser through your modem card, through your internet card, because you are connected with your internet as some internet or modem card is installed inside your computer, and that modem or internet card actually catches the signals of your Wi-Fi modem. Okay? Then it only interacts with the operating system. For example, you have a Windows operating system installed inside your computer, so you used Google Chrome web browser, you requested for a web page. That web page got to your computer, and it opened up at the application software level. Then that web page interacted with the operating system, or your operating system actually got hold of that web page, and then the operating system passed that web page to the device driver, or it actually transferred that web page to the device driver, or operating system interacted with the device driver, and finally the device driver actually gave a green signal to that modem card, as a device driver was controlling that graphics card like any other external hardware component. So the device driver operates the hardware, means your external wireless card, your external modem card, or your external internet card, in order to send and receive the necessary user data, or in order to send or receive some data connected with that web page. It is key to note that although the system you buy has many drivers pre-installed inside it, those programs or those softwares are provided by the manufacturing company. This is especially important if you are experiencing problems with your computer, with your device, or you want to connect an unrecognized device with your computer, but your computer is not recognizing that device, is not taking up that device. So in that case, you will probably have to download a device driver for that external hardware component from the device driver's website. So after operating system, after device drivers, the third type of an operating system is utility programs or utilities. Utility software, or simply utilities, provides additional facilities to your computer to carry out tasks which are beyond the capabilities of the operating system. A utility program is a system software, is a type of system software that helps users to analyze, configure, monitor, or help maintain their computers. A utility program solves the problems relevant to the hardware components of a computer. It solves the problems relevant to the software components of a computer, and a utility program solves the problems relevant to the files and folders of a computer. So these are the programs intended for diagnostic and maintenance tasks for a computer. They solve the issues of hardware, software, and files. They diagnose and troubleshoot the hardware, software, and files of a computer. A single piece of utility software is usually called a utility or tool. Utility software should be contrasted with application software. It is opposite to the application software, which allows users to do things. I'm talking about the application software. That application software allows the user to do things like creating text documents, playing games, listening to music, or surfing the web. Rather than providing these kind of user-oriented or output-oriented functionality, a utility program, a utility software usually focuses on how the computer infrastructure, including the hardware, operating system, softwares, and data storage. So it focuses on how the computer infrastructure, these hardware components, should operate without any problem, smoothly. So due to this focus, some utilities are rather technical and targeted at people with an advanced level of computing knowledge. As you can clearly see in this diagram that a device driver chip is exactly similar to, or to some extent similar to, like a RAM chip, like it's a green semiconductor chip. So a device driver is also a physical hardware component. That's why it is a hardware, it actually supports hardware components. Utility program supports those hardware components, and but interesting thing to notice is that device driver lies below the drivers, means on the topmost hierarchy users or application programs exist, Below the application software's operating system exists. Below the operating system, device drivers exist. Below the device drivers, below the user drivers, device drivers exist, and these device drivers are actually controlling the input-output devices like keyboard, monitor, or pen drive like USB, etc. So the device drivers are actually controlling these external hardware components by communicating with the device controllers, and they are with the help of operating system, these device drivers are actually transferring the data of these hardware components to the users, and are communicating the data of the users with these devices. While the utility programs are actually residing here with the operating system, here with the part of system software, utility programs are actually lying somewhere with the operating system. So most operating systems include a set of basic utility programs for users, and additional utilities or utility programs can be downloaded from the internet. But some of the utility programs are actually pre-built inside a computer when you buy a new laptop or device. Examples and features of utility software include some utility programs are backup softwares that help a user create backup copies of the files on their computer. So the utility programs help in the backing up of the softwares. Another example is that a utility program can be a device manager that helps a user install new hardware such as a mouse or USB, as you know about the device drivers. So a utility program can be a disk cleaner that helps a user to clean the hard disk in order to get more free space. A utility program can be a file manager that allows the user to manage the files and folders inside a computer system. A utility program can be a task manager that shows that which programs are currently running or executing by the CPU. So a utility program tasks vary from crucial data security to disk drive defragmentation. Utility program allows the user to defragment or divide their hard disks into multiple parts. And a device driver, a utility program can be an antivirus program, can be a security software program in order to remove the viruses, malwares, or Trojan horses or any suspicious things from your computer. Likewise, a utility program can be a file compression software which can be used to reduce the size of your large files or data. A utility program can be a diagnostic software. A utility program can be a data recovery software to help get back the lost data. A utility program can be a firewall for protection against external threats. For example, a Windows firewall. Firewall is actually present in everybody's computer, so it is basically a utility program. So most of these utility programs are already pre-built inside your computer, and you can use them. But if you want additional utility programs for certain purposes, you can download them from the internet. So this is a very clear diagram which can actually tell the status of all the types of a system software. As told you earlier, that a user lies at the topmost hierarchy inside a computer. A user uses a program or any kind of app or any kind of application software for fulfilling a certain specific purpose. So a user is using the application software, and that user is creating some data inside that application software. The user is actually using certain options or instructions of that application's software. So the application software is as a result getting controlled by the operating system. The operating system is also providing system utilities or any kind of system tool to the application program or operating system is able to provide the utility tool to a user if the user needs that. For example, if a user wants to scan the computer for viruses or wants to remove some viruses from the computer, then the operating system would make available that system utility software to the user. So the operating system is making a connection between the system utility and between the user. This operating system is also acting as a bridge between the device driver and the user. If you are connecting, the user is connecting some device with the computer, like for example a USB, so the operating system would be able to automatically install its device driver, or would be able to automatically awake or probe its device driver, so that the USB can interact with the computer. Likewise, at the bottom level, hardware devices exist, like input-output devices, or CPU, or RAM, or hard disk, etc. So if a user wants to store his data inside a computer, the data would go from that application program to the operating system. Operating system would send the data directly to the hardware device, like a hard disk, for storage. So at uppermost level, user exists, application programs exist. After application programs, operating system or system utilities exist. After operating system, device drivers exist at the second last level, and at the last or at the bottom level, hardware devices exist. So this is the hierarchy, or this shows the layers of system softwares or certain hardware inside a computer, piling up on one another in a sequence. So dear students, we are ending our lecture here. Today we actually studied basic concepts of hardware and software. We talked about the differences between a hardware and software. A hardware is a physical or tangible component which can be touched, and software is, while a logical component, an intangible part which can be seen, whose interface can be seen but it cannot be touched. We talked about their differences. Then we started with the types of software. A software basically has four types, like system software and application software and licensed softwares and internet applications. But we started from the system software. And a system software further has four types. The major and most important type of a system software is its operating system. Then it has its device drivers, it has its utility programs, and it has, last but not the least, language processors. We will cover the language processors in our next lecture. But today we talked about the introduction of system software. We talked about utility programs, device drivers. We talked about the operating systems. Operating systems control basically all the activities of a computer. They control all the input-output devices, all the resources, CPU, memory, or storage devices of a computer. They are responsible to make hardware or software components. They are able to make them able to communicate with one another. They let the hardware components communicate with software components. They let the software components communicate with other software components. They let the hardware components communicate with other hardware components. So they actually are involved in with controlling all the basic functionalities or activities of a computer. They control all the resources of a computer. They are involved in controlling the communication between these hardware or software components. Likewise, we talked about the device drivers. That device drivers are the programs which actually allow external hardware components to get connected with the computer and to communicate with the computer successfully. Device drivers are the softwares which actually allow a computer to recognize external hardware components. If you are connecting a USB with a computer and a device driver for that USB is not installed inside your computer, so your computer or your operating system would not be able to recognize that USB, and the USB would not be able to transfer its data inside the computer, and the computer would not be able to transfer its data to the USB. So device driver actually device driver software actually enables a computer to get recognized by the operating system, by a computer. So device drivers are related with driving an external hardware component. Likewise, we talked about the utility programs. They are the utilities which actually are responsible for the diagnostic, maintenance, and for troubleshooting or for solving the problems of hardware, software components of the computer. They are responsible for solving the problems of files and folder systems. So at the end of this lecture, I've summarized the basic concepts, and inshallah in our next lecture we would cover the fourth type of a system software. So dear students, thank you for hearing this lecture. Stay safe, stay healthy, and Allah Hafiz.